We're recognizing this as version 1, circa 1619. Claes Jans Vischer was a Dutch Golden Age engraver, draftsman, mapmaker, and publisher who was born and died in Amsterdam. He was also known as Nicholas Johannes Piscator, after his father, from whom he learned the art of etching and printing. At the turn of the 17th century, Amsterdam was a vibrant center for artistic production, global trade, scientific endeavors, mapmaking, and print publishing. From 1611 until his passing in 1652, Vischer grew his print shop, aptly named the Vischer, into one of the largest and most important publishing dynasties in the Dutch Republic. His family continued its success for another 3/4 of a century. Now, I haven't told you all that biographical data just as background filler. It's important for you to understand the stature of the man and his business and what he would be risking if indeed he was the one who created the subterfuge. Because there's yet one more horseshoe to drop. What's this? This is yet another version of the same engraving. We don't know exactly when it came out. We're guessing circa 1621 because of the name of the person that has replaced Gabriel Bethlen. This is critically important because it shows that the publisher, Vischer, was not above repurposing his masterpieces to save on labor and make a second or third sale. This version is clearly made from the original plate. It's exact in every line and detail, except one can see cross-fading where the king-elect of Hungary's head and the upper text has been removed and replaced by Frederick's general, Count Mansfield. As I cross-fade back and forth between the two, you might see the page seem to breathe a little at the top right. That's not because they are different, it's because of the angle at which these originals were photographed at different times in different places, and so they appear minutely off in that regard, but there is absolutely no doubt these were made from the exact same original engraved plate. We're forced to conclude, therefore, that the two Henrys version is version 3. But we know that this version, though created to look like the original, was an entirely new engraving. Its date of publication has been estimated as circa 1624, but that's based solely on the name Thomas Jenner, a printer-engraver who opened his shop that year in London. But the use of that name tells us a lot because history records Jenner's business thrived for about 30 years. We know his extensive catalogue of works, we know he sold portraits, broadsides, political materials, prints, books, maps, picture frames, stationery items. We know the names of the engravers and authors who worked for him, and even after his last known work he lived another 20 years, presumably healthy and prosperous. Yet his name is right there on a work of treason at the very start of his career in 1624. Proof positive this was never released publicly. If it had been, there's utterly no doubt James's Star Chamber would have descended on Jenner's shop, hauled him off, tortured him, accused him of treason, and executed him. So we're stuck with somebody did this, somebody knew how dangerous it was. Not only dangerous, imagine how expensive this would be to completely re-etch, re-engrave such a masterpiece, to make it look as close as possible to the original, but not be the original. Why on earth would you do that when you'd already shown a propensity to just cut off the heads and reshape another engraving from the original plate? We have proof that he's already done that. Why would you have to make an entirely new plate for this one? So, was Vischer the artist or the engraver behind the two Henrys version? And if so, why was he unwilling to take the same shortcut when approached to create this dangerous version? There are multiple connections between Vischer, King Frederick, Henry de Vere, and Rosalie, suggesting they had ample opportunity to coordinate this subterfuge on the continent away from the prying eyes of King James's Star Chamber. So, enough speculation. We need historical facts. Who, was, where, when. Let's look at King Frederick V. His brief reign as King of Bohemia ended in battle on November 8, 1620. Forced to abdicate, he lived the rest of his life in exile, mostly at The Hague. He died in 1632. Henry de Vere. In 1620, he served under his kinsman, Sir Horatio Vere, in the Palatinate. He was appointed to a council ordered to determine the aid that England would render Frederick V, then Elector Palatine. In June 1624, however, Henry was back in the Low Countries, serving the new Elector Palatine, Maximilian I, who had conquered his cousin Frederick. In April 1625, Henry died of fever at The Hague and was buried in Westminster Abbey on 25th of July 1625. So Henry de Vere and Frederick V are in The Hague together almost a year. Just a day's horse ride, 40 miles away from Vischer's print shop in Amsterdam. Where's Rosely? In 1624, he was one of 4 Englishmen appointed to command troops fighting in the Low Countries against the Spanish. Right there, same area. On 10th of November, 1624, Rosely died of a fever at Bergen op Zoom, aged 51. But note that puts him and Henry de Vere and King Frederick V all together in the same area for about 6 months, and he's just 90 miles away from Vischer and Amsterdam. Tragically, Rosely's son James also died of fever 5 days prior to Henry. They were both buried in the parish church of Titchfield, Hampshire. So, all the key players are in the same place at the same time with the opportunity to get together and execute this subterfuge. Clearly, the man to do it would be the one who created the masterpiece in the first place. But is there anything in version 3 that points clearly to the hand of the master who created version 1? Tune into part 4. What's in a name?